Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hive in Session. I'm your host, as always, Ben, and I'm really pleased to be joined by Professor Julie Hodges from Durham University. Julie, thank you very much for joining me today.
Hi, Ben. You're welcome.
Excellent. So I understand today, Julie, that we're going to be discussing how managers can guide and engage their people through kind of times of change. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly, Ben. I mean, what we're going to look at is in terms of currently we are, we are all living through a time of unprecedented change where change is getting faster, where change has been imposed on us as a result of the impact of the COVID virus. So we're now at a stage at what happens now is as we, organizations look at moving to perhaps different operating models such as hybrid working, for example. What does that mean in terms of how leaders and managers engage people in change? So rather than the change being imposed on them, as happened when COVID first hit, how can we move now to actually engaging people within change? And there's two processes to the approach to change. There's what's called the process approach, and there's a people approach. And the process approach tends to be a planned approach where you start off looking at understanding what the situation is, articulating the vision and the purpose, developing a change roadmap. It's about focusing on things like the culture and the values, who's accountable, where's responsibility, and so on. But what's also important, and what I want to focus on, is what I call a people approach to change, because all change is personal. And people they're not interested in knowing how the organization will benefit or how change might work elsewhere. What all of us want to know is how the change will impact us. And therefore, it's about being, I think, managers and leaders looking at how they can effectively engage people, and also how they can react to people's responses to change as well. Because in the work and the research that I do, that's often the key question that I'm asked, is in terms of, how do we deal with responses to change? Because we've all been through so much change over the last 18 months, and people are quite fatigued, they're quite exhausted as well. And they may show that now through opposing and resisting change, in fact. And that's because people resist being controlled. They don't actually like, being told what they have to do. And I think neuropsychology confirms that the first response to anything new is emotional. We act in an emotional way to it. But also resistance is often used as an excuse for the failure of change. So it's about how can managers actually effectively understand why people will react in the way that they do, and what drives that behavior. Mm-hmm. And there's traditional ways, traditional approaches to managing such responses. There's, managers need to give support. They need to ensure that people are given the training, it might be mentoring, coaching, the time to acclimatize to anything new. It's so important when engaging people that they're given time to be included in the decision making. So whenever feasible to do so, and I say that whenever feasible to do so, because sometimes when something like a global pandemic hits, it's not possible. 18 months ago, organizations had to react very quickly, in fact. But the traditional approaches are also tend to be about communication. So it's really important in order to, deal with people's responses and to engage them. It's often we do that through explaining and selling to them the rationale for the change too, and getting them to be involved and to participate. So these tend to be traditional approaches. I think moving forward, everybody's had time to work on their own and been self-managed too. So there's certain expectations now among people about what will that mean about what the future of work will look like, and how can they be involved in making the discussions? How can they be involved in the discussions about change? So in terms of engaging people and addressing different responses to change that helps to engage them, it's about being mindful of any accidental triggers that might make people oppose change. So it may be if they feel that their psychological contract is being challenged, and the psychological contract is about the expectation. So we all have unwritten expectations about what we expect, both from our employers and from the work that we do as well. It's also about creating inclusivity and connection too. That's vital, so that people feel that they are included in any decisions about change, and making sure that there's that inclusivity, that there's that connection, what I call the co-creation of change. So rather than change being forced on people, imposed on them, they actually feel that they are involved and they are being asked about what they think, and their opinions are being listened to. So they're able to voice their opinions about what they think needs to be changed, along with, ideas, given the space for innovation, also able to voice any hopes, any concerns that they might have as well. So it's about being able to encourage innovation, collective decision making, joint decision making, and also, change doesn't happen with one person at the top of the organization saying this is what we have to do. It's about teamwork. So it's about encouraging that teamwork that's important. And what all this does is it creates security. It creates security, what's called psychological safety and security, that people feel it's okay to be innovative. It's okay to take some risks. It's okay to raise ideas as well.
Yeah, and I mean, that sounds, it's all absolutely fascinating stuff, Julie. And I think it's really well timed, as you say, given everything that's been happening over kind of the last 18 months. I think when I think about kind of examples that I've seen this, I suppose, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, one of the most common scenarios, perhaps you'd agree, is kind of on this sort of, I suppose, change to working practices, whether it be remote or hybrid or back to the office. I mean, what a particular scenario that I saw a little while ago was an organization who, took a lot of pride in having created a really good office space and, put things on for their employees and loved having them there, and felt like a lot of their culture really, sprang from having people all together in the office and kind of creating that buzz. However, the move to the pandemic has given people kind of a greater level of flexibility. And now there's a little bit of a disconnect between the organization that wants to come back, that wants their employees to come back to the shared working space, but the feedback from their employees saying they would prefer, if not total flexibility to work from home whenever, at least some leeway to work from home some of the time. So the questions that they were asking me, that we were discussing, was what can we do to kind of get people thinking about all the good things that there were about the office again, rather than having them focus on just how much they enjoy working from home.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's about actually, and in a way, stepping back and doing a bit of reflection and getting people to share. So what's worked well from working from home, what's really improved, what's not gone so well, and therefore, what do we need to do differently moving forward? So it's taking time to learn from what's gone on in the last 18 months or so when people have been working at home, and what needs to be different. And also to find out, there are certain things that the organization will expect from employees, but also I think it's very important to give the employees voice about what they expect and what they would like in terms of flexible working. And it's about having that discussion, as I say, in a safe environment where people are, they feel they can raise what they would like, what they have learned, what they want to be done differently as well. And it's really important that managers listen to this, because one of the things about the pandemic, it's been absolutely catastrophic. But there's also some good things come out of it. There is the option of people now to work much more flexibly, and people have shown that they can work flexibly. It was tough to begin with, but there's been so much that has been learned. And I think it would be so important. It would be terrible if we took a backward step and everybody went right back into working as they had done before. So it's an opportunity, I think, to really give people the space to think about what would work for them, and also what would work for the organization too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Julie. I mean, I personally, I don't think the genie can go back into the bottle. I think people have kind of seen the other side, and as you say, have kind of almost proven the concept, that with flexibility, you don't necessarily sacrifice productivity for flexibility. Before you leave us, Julie, because I'm conscious not to take up too much of your time, I suppose a question that I would be wondering if I was listening to this was, what is sort of a I suppose, a lower friction way that myself as a leader or a manager inside an organization can just kickstart that conversation around an initiative that maybe I would look to take, that more people-centered approach towards.
Yeah, I think create the space. The space might be give people the space. You have to put aside the space and not make it too formal either. I mean, it's about finding, a great technique is to ask why, to ask the 5 whys of any change that you're thinking about. I think it's also about understanding about what's holding back any change in the organization as well. If people are saying we want to do this, but it's not yet happening, is understanding why. And it's also, I think, what has to happen is that managers have to make some tough calls. So people have to be clear about what's negotiable and what's not negotiable. So what are the areas that they can influence the change? And I think that's absolutely vital too. And the final thing I would say is about what's called, you need to, middle management are key, but they're often have the hardest job when it comes to change, because they have change coming down, they have change coming up, but they're absolutely vital. And it's about managers being able to sort of, in a way, thaw the frozen middle, where change can often get stuck, in fact. But that's the layer of management that often has the most power and most influence, and also needs support as well.
That's a lot to think about certainly from the middle management perspective. But yeah, I absolutely agree, Julie. But well, look, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Ben. Good to talk to you.
Yes, you as well. Right, everybody, that's going to be it for another episode of Hive in Session. And as always, I'll see you next time. Thank you.